Is due to come into effect on January the 19th, one day before President Donald Trump leaves office. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the aim is to hold Houthi rebels accountable for what the US says are terrorist acts. The UN fears the designation will prevent aid from getting to those who need it the most and damage peace efforts, though the Houthis say they're still committed to talks.
The most urgent priority in Yemen right now, Mr. President, is to prevent a massive famine. The data shows that 16 million people will go hungry this year. Already about 50,000 are essentially starving to death in what's essentially a small famine. Another 5 million are just one step behind them. Every decision the world makes right now must take this into account. On Sunday, the United States announced it will designate Ansar Allah as a specially designated terrorist entity and foreign terrorist organization, or FTO, under US domestic law. For months, aid agencies have unanimously opposed this designation. They believe it will accelerate Yemen's slide into a large-scale famine.
Well, this was the warning from David Beasley, who was appointed by President Trump to head the UN World Food Programme.
We are struggling now without the designation. With the designation, it's going to be catastrophic. It literally is going to be a death sentence to hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of innocent people in Yemen.
Let's talk more about this with Willow Rook, who's the Yemen Deputy Country Director for Action Against Hunger. She joins us from Aden by Skype. Thanks very much indeed for being with us. So can you tell us in practical terms what it will mean for agencies like yours on the ground, this designation of the Houthis as a terrorist organisation?
It'll effectively cut us off at the knees. Yemen is already one of the most complex and difficult operating environments for humanitarians in the world. And what this is going to do is take a hard situation and make it effectively impossible. We work with Action Against Hunger through lots of health facilities, delivering primary health care as well as nutrition services. And every single health facility in the country is government run. So when you remove our ability to work with the government, we can't deliver those life-saving services. We're talking about importation of essential supplies, of food, of fuel, of medicine. If we can't bring supplies in, there's not very much that humanitarians can do.
So whereabouts is this going to hit the country worse? I mean, you mentioned it's working effectively with the government, so I suppose it's everywhere, but are there areas that are particularly bad at the moment?
Yeah, well, when we talk about the Houthis, it's important to remember that they are the de facto authorities in the north of the country, which houses more than half of the country's population. So that's where most of the need is, and that's where most of the people are.
What in the past, some organisations and countries even have been reluctant to give the money that they've pledged because they say that the Houthis are preventing aid getting to the people who need it. Has that been your experience of things there?
As I said before, it's certainly not an easy environment as things stand, but the need is there, the humanitarian service providers are there, and solutions can be found. It's not a perfect system by any means, but we need at least to be able to get supplies into the country to have even a fighting chance.
And at the moment, do you have any stockpiles that you could use in the meantime?
2020 has been a difficult year for the world, but especially for Yemen. The country is already staring down the barrel of famine. There was a fuel crisis. There's an ongoing economic crisis. There's not a lot that we have to work with. ACF and other humanitarian actors are trying to put in place contingency plans to make sure that life-saving aid can continue to be delivered. But all of these are just Band-Aids. If these measures go through, people will die. People will be killed by politics, by this decision. And that is not something that can be overstated. And that's not something that can be prevented by strategic planning or stockpiling.